Hi, Pastor Nathan Deck with your hashtag Better Together devotion for today. And this week I've been focusing on numbers in the Bible. And there's so many of them. I'm not going to be able to cover them all this week, but it's going to be so fun to go into various places where numbers had more meaning than just counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's a story within Matthew's gospel that I really like. It's Jesus. He's talking to the 12, and he mentions to them, you need to beware of the yeast of the Pharisees. And yeast, you may know this from cooking, is something you use to help the bread to rise. He worries and tells them, beware of the yeast of the Pharisees. And being themselves the 12 stooges that they were, the 12 look around and go, oh yeah, we didn't bring any bread. And Jesus gets really frustrated at this point and says, wait a minute, I'm not talking about real bread. I'm talking about more than just bread. If you were worried about bread, didn't you pay attention? Didn't we just do two big feedings? One feeding 5,000? And how many baskets did you have left over after that? And they go, oh, well, we had 12. He says, yeah, right. And then we fed 4,000. And after the 4,000, how many baskets did you have left? And they go, oh, yeah, we had 7. And Jesus acts like this should clear everything up. Well, think about those numbers for a moment. Let's take 5,000, but let's knock off the zeros and just talk about 5. The number 5 is really important for the Hebrew Jewish people because 5 is the number of books in the Torah. The Torah is the first 5 books. The Pentateuch is sometimes what it's called, which literally just means 5. 5 books of the Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. These are the core of the writings that the prophet Moses gave. They're the core writings for their faith. This is where the law, this is the teaching, this is the instruction, this is the Torah. And so the number 5 becomes really important for anyone who's Jewish because it points back to the Torah, constantly reminding them. Well, after that, from 5,000 people being fed, they got how many baskets? Ooh, another number that is really important to the Jewish people. The number 12. 12 tribes. And notice that Jesus actually picked 12 to be his disciples, his main lead apostles. 12 is a number that connects them to each other. Now, go to the other miracle. It's not just as easily apparent. The 4,000 going to 7 baskets. Well, what do we got going on here? Well, 4 is a number that oftentimes is related to the spiritual realm and the spiritual world. In the culture that Jesus was among, this is after Alexander the Great had kind of diffused Greek culture throughout, which affected Jewish culture. That they had this really common understanding that there were 4 elements, earth, air, fire, and water, and that everything came from that. And so to talk about the number 4 was to talk about the spiritual realm within the created realm, that kind of thing, and to connect those two. And then Jesus says, how many baskets? Ooh, look, we're back at the number 7. Isn't that what I began with this week? Yeah, back to the number 7 of being complete. What's really interesting at this point for us as Christians is the number 4 takes on an entirely different meaning because for us, like 5 to the Jews is the Torah, 4 to us as Christians becomes the number of the Gospels. It becomes our link. And at this point, Jesus does this wonderful connection of 7. 7 being complete and whole and truly done well. And it's at this point in the Gospel of Matthew that Jesus begins revealing his plan. The plan of going to Jerusalem, the plan of sharing all that he is going to go through, the crucifixion, his life, death, burial, resurrection. He begins sharing it with them. Perhaps you've gotten distracted in the midst of Lent through something that is physical, and it's distracting you from your spiritual walk. Take time to beware of the yeast of the Pharisees. That is the yeast that leads us down paths of judgmental and hypocrisy and not living up to what we hold others to. And instead, look with compassion and look for the spiritual bread, the spiritual food that God is giving us today. When you do, you'll find we'll be better together.